All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Peaking Podcast. Very excited to have Timothy Daniel with us. He is the CEO of RIMBA and has a really cool story and founder's journey. So, Timothy, if you do it for us, would you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So my name is Timothy, and you can call me Tim. I'm the founder of RIMBA, and RIMBA is an AI automation software for operational analytics and compliance data management for energy companies. But a bit about myself and how it started was I grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia, born and raised there. I moved to the U.S. about 3 years ago. I got a scholarship to UC Berkeley, and I was very fortunate for that. That was how I came to the U.S. Now, my background was in law, so I studied law and then worked for a mining and energy company for 6 years. And essentially, that's how I got to know about this world where there's a lot of operations in the energy side and a lot of compliance related to it as well. A lot of that is a manual process today. A lot of spreadsheets, people putting in data manually, doing manual analysis, and I thought that this would be a great way to actually automate it with the rise of the technology today. So part of that is why I started Rimba, because I want to automate a lot of the work that I did manually when I was in working in energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. I feel that's where a lot of AI is doing is taking that manual workload off her plate. Now, tell us a little bit about going back to Jakarta and growing up. How did your experiences there and life growing up? How did that shape some of your worldviews, your experience? How did that shape a little bit of who you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love to share about my background because my background is not the typical type of background that people usually find to be a founder in Silicon Valley. I never thought when I was younger that I'd be, living here in the West in San Francisco and building a software company. When I grew up in Indonesia, I was actually when I was younger, it wasn't the easiest for us. In Indonesia, 1998, there was like a huge, like riots and crisis and hateful racial discrimination. And me as an Indonesian born, so my ancestors came from China, but they've
Hmm.
been in Indonesia for a long time. But usually in Indonesia, we're kind of like a minority. And in 1998, there was like a huge riot where, you know, our family and my parents were kind of like victims to that. People was, they were burning our car, and then it was a crazy time. And we never really recovered from that financially. So it was quite difficult when I was in my childhood, in my early days. And but I was fortunate enough that my parents really value education, so they try to give me the best education that they can. So I was homeschooled for a number of years. That's kind of like how I learned English. And that really opened my eyes to like in America, there's like a lot of things that you can do. And, people really appreciate that if you want to build something great, that's the place to be. So I always had a thought of like, wow, America would be great, but, never thought that I'd be able to actually make it here. And then long story short, got a scholarship in high school. That's how I went to, so my first formal education was in high school when I got that scholarship. And then after that, I got another scholarship to law school. So studied law. And then when I worked for this energy company for 6 years, I would really attribute my entrepreneurial journey to my boss. So the CEO of the company, he was really entrepreneurial at heart and started companies and inspired me to do so. So when I said, hey, I wanted to apply to business school in the US, he was really supportive. He wrote the recommendation letters. He actually even gave like a financial guarantee to like, hey, yeah, you're gonna um you're gonna go to business school. So that was like, game changing.
Yeah.
And I got a it ended up that I got a scholarship, so full ride to Berkeley, and then yeah, it was from there, um, really like I would say that my life changed at 180 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. So when you were going to school in, your youth throughout high school, getting
Mhm.
scholarships to go to law school, Did you know what you wanted to do, or was that just like, no, I need to do something and I want it to be something great, and you just law came to be that way, or what was kind of the guiding force there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, initially, I thought, I wanted to do something cool, and I
Mhm.
thought that, work at a lawyer is a really cool thing. I watched this show called Suits when I was younger, and I thought
Yeah.
like, wow, being a lawyer is really cool. And then mining and energy is big in Indonesia, so I thought that, if I get to work in law and in mining and energy, and I think, that would be something great. So basically that's what I work towards. I also always had this inkling that, hey, I want to start a business, but no one in my family have ever started a business before. So don't really have a reference point there. And then everyone kept telling like, yeah, you got to look for, study a skill, like, something that can, actually that you can do something with it. And, a law degree is kind of um it hits all the points there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's essentially what I studied. But always on the back end, I'm curious about, how people started businesses.
What were some of the biggest lessons learned in the 6 years of being a lawyer, whether it's industry experience or law or just being in an
I think one of the things that I learned about is that something that I haven't really, touched on before is when we're talking about energy, or there's always like fossil fuels, which was more popular back in the day, oil and gas companies, coal, mining companies that basically, powered the industrial revolution
Mhm.
for people to manufacture things. And then today, renewable energy is a really huge thing. And that is something I learned over the last 6 years. And that also prompted, the inspiration to actually, have RIMBA focus on automation in the energy space.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. I love that. And so when you ended up going to Berkeley, did you have a clear idea, a path, what that meant, what you were going to do? What was Tell us a little bit about that experience and uh
Yeah. Well, in 2020, that was like the start of COVID. I
Mhm.
really had, I would say, this kind of like midlife crisis. Well, I don't know if it's called midlife, but some form of crisis that literally I'm thinking about, hey, do I really want to do this forever? Like, do I want to stay in law? Do I want to practice as an in-house counsel, forever? And then very clearly the answer is no. So I started thinking about, hey, if I want to, start a business, if I want to take that risk, I better do it now because delaying it won't help. So I thought about if I want to do, start something, where do I want to do it? And I saw that, one of the best places in the world to start a company was in Silicon Valley. So I started thinking about how can I get myself there? And because of that, I applied to schools around the Bay Area. I applied to Stanford, applied to Berkeley, got into Berkeley. And essentially, when I came to Berkeley, I knew that the purpose here is to figure out how to actually take the company off the ground. RIMBA wasn't the first company that I started. So I started tinkering around startups in 2023. So about 6 months after I got here to the US, I started tinkering around startups. Because of my legal background, I thought that it'd be great to create an AI tool that does legal research. So go, search through all the regulations and help lawyer bring out those regulations and get the specific details and sentences in particular cases. But I did that for about 7 months and it didn't really go anywhere. So, and at the time,
I could see it working though. It makes a lot of sense.
yeah, it does make a lot of sense. And then I realized that, you know what? There are companies that really succeed here. And it's always the question whether it's the founder market fit. Are you the right person
Sure.
to be the one doing this? And it seems like, after trying for 7 months and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, it's kind of like an indicator that, maybe I'm not the best person to be doing this. And talk to a couple of advisors and then talk to them about like, hey, I was thinking to do, I was doing this. And I also looked at opportunities in compliance and they were pointing out that, hey, I think it's probably time for you to kind of pivot and try compliance. So that's what I
Sure.
did with RIMBA. So not long after that, things started, taking off. We got our first like pilot customer And then things just started rolling from there. And then won a couple of pitch competitions in Berkeley. And that's where we got our first checks
Mhm.
into RIMBA. And yeah, and then, since then, I never looked back.
Yeah. Did you have the same partners or founders? You're saying we, so was that, were you doing the last startup with the same people, or what did that look?
No, the
Okay.
last startup I was basically with a different, I don't think at the time we formalized anything. So it's kind of like trial and with other people of building
Yeah.
something together. But I would say that with Rimba, it's a different, so it's a new team. And yeah, it was different co-founders. And yeah, it was a great experience.
Where did you find your team? How did you meet them?
So with Rimba, I actually found my co-founder Akshay, and this is an interesting story because we found each other through Y Combinator has a co-founder matching platform, and I talked to probably at least 40 something or so folks in the platform until I found Akshay. And
Mhm.
one of the things that really I saw that it stood out with him was that he was really biased to action. So it means that, 20 minutes to the call, he was like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's start a project, for 2 weeks. Let's see how far we can go from there. And if it works out, let's extend this co-founder dating. And then if that works out, then yeah, let's do this together. So it started out 2 weeks, and then we got pilot customers from there, and we just continued forward. And then yeah, we're still co-founders still today, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I think Akshay really brought the best out of me in terms of learning new things quickly, you know, and I think we have this complementary skill that helps each other build the company.
Yeah. Really cool. Really cool. So, let's dive into Rimba. When you guys jumped into it, what was the first problem you set out to solve?
So with Rimba, the first problem that we were solving is a lot of the manual data collection and data reconciliation for compliance reporting. So what essentially that looks like is this: when energy companies, and I would specify renewable fuel companies, so these are companies that are producing renewable gas or renewable diesel, is that how they can define what they do is this is renewable fuels and it's sustainable, is because they have to prove the origin of where the raw material comes from, how they're reducing carbon emissions and using these renewable raw materials or feedstock. So they have to do a lot of tracking. They have to track where the raw material comes from, and they have to do a lot of calculations towards, transporting this raw material, how much carbon emissions is related with that. And what we help with is how can we automate that collection of data that documents the raw material, and also how can we automate the reconciliation to make sure that everything ties up and everything matches.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that we did. And essentially what it looks like is that our customer would have usually like a spreadsheet where they keep track of these things. So it means that they would look at receipts, and they would, have somebody do data entry into these spreadsheets and then reconcile that data.
Yeah.
So we automate that process entirely, where we're using Rimbus software to extract data from PDFs, from pictures of receipts and bills of lading, and reconcile that data automatically in Excel.
Could you give us an example of a customer?
Yeah. So, for example, our first customer, I would say, is a company that's located in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia. It's called Apical. And what we did for them was helping them with their mass balancing, which is essentially, tracking this data for a compliance program called ISCC, or International Sustainability and Carbon Certification.
So, I'm trying to, can you give examples of different types of renewable energy?
So, a couple of examples of renewable energy, and I would specify fuels. So, we're
Yeah.
not talking about solar or wind.
Right.
So, these are
Exactly.
something.
Yeah.
So, renewable gas is one of them. Renewable gas is essentially you're taking methane, which is a type of gas that's coming out from landfills. So, a lot of landfills, as things ferment in those landfills, they produce gas, which is not good for the environment, released to the air. And renewable natural gas, the concept is to capture those methane gases for those to be used in transportation fuel. What does that look like? So, for example, one good example is Amazon trucks. A lot of it is gas powered, and a lot of these gases are coming from renewable natural gas or
Mhm.
RNG. RNG is not just, created from landfills. You can also take it from livestock, so farms, cow manures, swine manures. There's actually a lot of farms in the US and they produce a lot of methane, and capturing these reduces that methane being released to the air, and it can be used instead for transportation. Another way is also wastewater treatment. So a lot of our wastewaters, they also ferment and created gas. So those gases are captured. And the last piece is also from food waste. So think about a distillery, a brewery, beers, or other types of packaged food. They have a lot of waste there that gas can also be captured and to
Mhm.
create fuel. So that's one. That's everything gas related.
Right.
Another one is diesel. So diesel fuel can be made through used cooking oil. So
Mhm.
there's an industry where people collect used cooking oil and turn that into fuels that could power our cars. For example, in California, if you buy diesel, it's typically renewable diesel. So it means that these are coming from waste. Used cooking oil is one of them. And renewable diesel can also be made also from other types of oils. So a lot of like farms in the US that produces oil seeds that can also be used as the raw material to create biodiesel. And in other parts of the world, it's other types of waste. For example, in Southeast Asia, where a lot of palm oil grows, the palm oil industry is really big there. They're taking a lot of the waste coming from the palm oil industry and using that to create biodiesel. And ethanol is also another. Ethanol is one type of fuels that can be used to replace gasoline. And with ethanol, it's literally made from corn. So the US has a lot of corn, and actually a lot of these excess corn, so the ones that are no longer used for food because there's an excess need for corn in the US to be used as food, those are used to create ethanol, and ethanol can be used for actually about 10% of the gasoline that we get from our gas stations in the US. 10% of that is ethanol. Mhm.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that gives good perspective for people to kind of grasp the concept a little bit better. So you're capturing that information. Now, when you're thinking about your customers, you're giving an example of one of your customers. Can you talk a little bit about like the different types of customers you have, or is it just one standard type of customer?
Mhm. So the customer I mentioned earlier is just one type where they were gathering raw materials or feedstock from palm oil waste, and
Mhm.
this raw material is used to create biodiesel.
Right.
We have another customer that's located in Michigan, and they're a renewable natural gas company, and actually another one in Dallas. They're also a renewable natural gas company. And what they do is they produce gas from landfills and
Yeah.
they produce gas from cow manure. So these are another two. And what we do for them is essentially there are these low carbon regulations in the US, low carbon programs that allow these companies to be able to get carbon credits when they're producing renewable natural gas.
Mhm.
So these programs are called, one in California is called the LCFS, or the Low Carbon Fuels Program.
Mhm.
And on a federal level, there is also the Renewable Fuel Standard by the EPA. So it's the programs run by the EPA. And what happens here is that they have strict regulations that govern how RNG companies are supposed to track and keep a record of how they're producing renewable natural gas. And they have to make sure that all of these are readily available to be audited. They meaning these RNG companies. So what RIMBA does for these companies is to help them automate the process of collecting the data and also turning these data into reports that is required by the RFS and the LCFS
Mhm.
so that that report is readily available for an audit.
Yeah. Yeah. How have you gone about navigating getting new clients, working with enterprise clients? What does that look like for you? Is that natural? Has it been a difficult journey? What is that like?
Yeah, I think, part of building a startup, it's not just about, a lot of people thought that, hey, if you have a great product, that great product is enough for people to kind of like buy into whatever you're selling.
Not
That's not
true.
true.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's that a great product without, you being able to put yourself out there and explain it to your potential users and also iterate quickly to what they want.
Hmm.
I don't think you'll be able to build a great product and also get your customers. So
Hmm.
a lot of the times it has to be, you have to build a great product, but also have a great way to market your product and also have a great way of communicating that product to potential customers. So a
Yeah.
lot of things that I do, I'm not a salesperson, but I'm
Sure.
learning to be.
Yeah.
And I would say that over the last year and a half, I've been exercising and learning about how to actually do sales, do marketing, and part of it is actually traveling to different conferences and meeting potential customers face to face. Also putting content out on LinkedIn, building a website that can communicate what we do in a way that makes it easy for people to understand, especially people who are relevant to our industry, in this case, renewable fuel companies. And it's not a process that's one and done. So it means that once I built my great website, I never have to do anything with that again. It's an iterative process. So the same thing with sales. It's also an iterative process. I just came back from Nashville and I just attended this RNG conference there. I'm learning new things about the types of problems that RNG companies are facing, what operators are facing today, and how can I empathize with them and also iterate RIMBA's product to be able to serve their need and to solve their problems. So, and at the same time, also to update the way that I communicate our capabilities when I'm doing sales. And I would say that the journey has not been easy.
Hmm.
It's a journey that's worthwhile. And one of the things that I learn is that you have to keep learning and you have to learn fast
Hmm.
and implement those learnings fast.
Yeah. How, how um how much has the original vision changed, based off of validating with customers, going on the road and meeting with customers? Was your original idea, is it, the same as it was, or is it vastly different in its version 2 or 3 or beyond?
Mm. I would say that the vision remains the same because the vision is this, the big plan of for RIMBA. And also the reason why we focus in this space remains the same. For
Hmm.
example, when we built RIMBA, we built it for the focus of energy. Why energy? It's because we know that energy is something that is a basic need for everyone. And we're at this stage where energy could be a bottleneck. One example is right now in the United States, with the amount of just data centers that are being built and how much energy that they need, there is a lot more need for energy projects to be built in the United States. And because that is growing fast, we believe that if we focus in this industry, then we can also ride the wave to actually grow fast as well. That focus has remained the same.
Hmm.
And our vision that compliance and operational reporting. So initially we started with compliance and then we learned that not just compliance reporting that people hate to do, operational reporting is also something that people don't like to do, but they have to do it repeatedly every single day or every single week. And that focus, I would say, has expanded. So from compliance, we also expanded to operations. And but the same premise, I would say, stays the same, which is people have a reporting format. They have this template that they would follow. They're trying to, today, a lot of that work is done manually where somebody has to collect data, ask for data, and download data from different ERP softwares, ask data from different teams in the company. And they would have to make these reports. And Now, what RIMBA is doing is that how can we provide the solution to be able to obtain data from, in different formats, both structured and unstructured data, taking in from different ERP softwares, and also creating different types of reports. So I would say that we've expanded in terms of our offering, but also at the same time, we've become more focused. When we're talking about energy, initially we were trying to tackle, five different types of energy companies at the same
Right.
time. I think now we become more focused where yes, we're just focused on renewable fuels. Let's start to tackle both gas and liquid fuels and just focus on that. And so I would say, on one hand, we've expanded the capabilities of RIMBA based on our customers' need, but at the same time become really hyper focused in the types of customers and companies that we go after.
Yeah.
Um,
What are some of the trends you're seeing in the renewable energy space? What are some of the things that you're taking away from the different meetings and customers you're working with?
One thing that I would say is that I get asked this question a lot where, hey, with the current political landscape in the United States, it seems like it's not great for renewable energy. I would say that it's not true. Renewable energy is still growing. Is there more hurdles than what it was before? Yes, there is more hurdles today, but I see that the demand for renewable energy is also still high because regardless of how politically things could change, I think how the whole world looks at renewable energy is not changing. I think people are still looking at alternative ways to produce energy because everyone knows that at some point fossil fuel is going to be depleted, and right now it's the time to explore and figure out ways to create energy and also over time bring down the cost of actually producing energy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where do you see AI having the biggest impact in this industry?
That's a really good question. And I think there are so many ways that it can. So I would like maybe focus and pick a few that I would say that I have more knowledge on because when we're saying AI, I think we haven't even scratched the surface of what we can do with AI. I think this
Yeah.
is like the early days where people are first, introduced with, hey, this is a computer, this is how you can use this. And over the years, I think the way that people interact and use a personal computer has vastly changed. And I think the same thing with AI. I think as AI is really good in pattern recognition and being able to predict what is the next set of pattern that comes out. I think one of the things that we're seeing is definitely reporting is one area. And we're seeing that AI can also ingest and correlate information that is happening in a plant. So, for example, a typical plant has hundreds of sensors. That is a lot of data. Larger plants, if you're talking about, say, a plant that belongs to Shell or Chevron, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of sensors.
Mhm.
So it's not about the lack of data. Today, the data is being collected. It's about how can you parse through the data to actually get something useful out of it. If you're relying on people to actually do analysis, that's what happens today. Companies hire data analysts to try to figure out, how can they improve production? How can they reduce the amount of time the plant is down? And how can they, increase their awareness to do preventive maintenance. So it means that how can I fix something before it's broken? Because different, situations, different conditions in a plant, even though these are two of the exact same plants built in different locations, there are different factors that could affect it
Right.
and how it would determine when an equipment needs to be fixed or needs to be replaced. So
Mhm.
these kind of things, I think there are so many ways that AI could improve and AI could replicate the way that, the tribal knowledge that has been owned by operators,
Sure.
people who are running plants for 15 years, 20 years, but a lot of it stays as hunches. Hey, I have a hunch because I've seen enough in this industry that this is time for us to fix this equipment or
Yeah.
change this equipment. But I think now we can actually document those learnings into a software and use AI to actually look out for signals and patterns of when we can start fixing things. That's another area I would say that I'm really bullish about. But there are other aspects that people have been asking, like, hey, can AI help also predict pricing? And, ingest a lot of
Sure.
pricing data to be able to make the markets more efficient in terms of energy markets or carbon credit markets. I would
Mhm.
say that short answer is yes. We haven't really looked into that because we really want to focus on the problem that we're solving today. But I would imagine that there are or there will be AI companies and people who are looking into that because the applications are just, I would say there's a lot more applications that I haven't even think of.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So tell us a little bit about where you're at with your company. Is it right now still just you and your co-founder? Have you guys grown? What does that look like? What are your plans in the future?
Yeah. Um, I'd say that RIMBA is really growing. I think when we started, it's just me and my co-founder. Today we're a team of 5. So we've got 2 more engineers and an amazing lady that helps us with our ops and finance. And we're constantly growing. So we're looking for talent. We're looking for people who have an in-depth experience in compliance. We are looking for people with in-depth experience with energy operations. And last but not least, also AI engineering capabilities, because as we're growing, we really need great talent to be able to build great product and deliver great solutions
Yeah.
for our customer and our industry. So we're always on the lookout for that. Mhm.
Very cool. Very exciting. How do you feel about the on-site versus remote? Are you guys an on-site company? Are you remote? What does that look like?
We are a big believer of on-site. Today, not all of our team are on-site just yet,
Mhm.
but the goal is actually to have everyone on-site. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
What's what are some of the cool things as a CEO founder that you like to share? If you're attracting talent, if you're attracting engineers and operations, and what's some of the things you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think what I really wanted to share is that, there are so many industries that Silicon Valley has not touched, and these are typically legacy industries. And I think right now, I'm really bullish that legacy industries, there's a opportunity for us to actually automate a lot of the things that they have
Yeah.
done. And
Mhm.
because of that, I would always say that, hey, if you're interested to work in an area where people have find it really challenging to break into, which is legacy industries, especially energy companies, oil and gas companies. This is actually a time to do so
Mhm.
because right now we're still at the beginning. There are very few companies that are building in this space. And usually it's because of a lack of knowledge of the problems that exist in this space. Most people in Silicon Valley has never worked in an energy company before,
Right.
vice versa. It's kind of like there's this iron wall
Mhm.
where energy companies are just they're not aware of technology and what's out there, what's new. They're still using the same software they've been using for the last 20 years. Not a lot has changed there, but also at the same time, no one who has really built and lived in software has really had any experience in energy or what that looks like. For example, when I first, talked to my co-founder, Akshay, he has no idea about energy. I mean,
Yeah.
he has known very little about it, but he's a very smart guy. He's an AI engineer that has built so much automation in the space. And he studied and learned about AI before ChatGPT came out. So he knows very much about software,
Mhm.
but knows hardly anything about the energy industry and what type of problems that they're facing. So I
Yeah.
would say today, if you are, someone that's curious to actually bring breakthrough technology and legacy industries in the energy space,
Mhm.
then join us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like it. I like it. Well, hopefully some of the listeners will hear that and reach out. I think that's great. And maybe just a few more fun ones. Are there any AI tools or things that you're using that you want to give a shout out to that you think are really great?
Yeah. I actually would love to give a shout out to a very successful, Berkeley founder as well. I've been using Perplexity. So this is an amazing tool where I get a lot of information and I can fact check it really quickly. And I've been a user of Perplexity and also had the opportunity to meet, Arvind Srinivas when I was in YC. He came to be a speaker and I thought that, this man is building something amazing. And also he's building something amazing really, really fast.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool thing, especially I can't imagine when he first started building Perplexity, what would people say, especially because at the time there's, ChatGPT and Google has been around for a long time and he's trying to build something competing. It must be really difficult to convince his early investors, but he's able to do so and build something amazing. So
Yeah.
I deeply respect that.
Yeah. Cool. I like that. Is there anything that you do in your free time hobbies to manage stress? I know you've been on the road traveling. You're a jet setter. What do you do to stay sane?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the time spent on work, but one of the things that I really like to do is I I really love to ski.
Yeah, yeah,
During the winter months, this is actually, one of the best times that I could actually go out on the weekend to actually go out and ski. But now this is not winter, so one of the things that I do is I love food.
yeah.
Me and my wife, we would constantly look for new places to go and to actually look for new food. And also, I think San Francisco has a lot of great food around, and we're always exploring out. I would say the Bay Area, not just San Francisco. So we would go around the Bay Area and look for amazing food. One of the things that I find really helpful in de-stressing is that actually I find church like my therapy. Every Sunday I would go. And I think this is one of the times where, I would spend an hour and a half. And this, I would say, is one of the best hour and a half I spent the entire week because it really helps me reorient myself. It really sets me back to the purpose of why I'm doing this in the
Mhm.
first place. And I find that, I, s- I find that, having a personal relationship with my maker to be something that, I find profoundly helpful
Yeah,
and help me go through. So this is, a personal thing that I do, but I do find that it to be really meaningful and helpful for me to go through, however stressful the week has been.
yeah. Cool. Love it. Love to hear it. Well, Timothy, where can people find you? If someone wants to potentially join the team, someone's just interested in what you do. Yeah, where can they find you and how can they be a part of the mission?
Yeah. So you can reach out to me at Timothy at rimba.ai. Our website is also rimba.ai. So pretty straightforward there. And I'd say check out our LinkedIn, Rimba's LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Timothy Daniel. That's my full name. I'd say that that's where you'd find updates about what we've been up to and, the changes and the progress for Rimba. So check that out. And if you think that this is something that you're aligned with, or if you're curious about, then yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, Tim, thanks so much for joining the show. Really enjoyed our conversation and excited to follow your journey and see all the great things that you do.
Thank you. And thanks, Brian, for hosting this. And, I really appreciate when you reached out. I think this is my first podcast, so I'm very excited about it. And I hope to collaborate with you, further in the future.
Absolutely. Cool.
All right. Thank you.